Good morning.
Good morning.
I might take you straight to the article in today's AFR. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I know this is historical stuff, but I think it's important to go over from a governance perspective. So there's a quote here in the paper, apparently from the former Deputy Chair, saying there are two ways to correct it and it's going to be up to you. It's your decision which way we do it, because if I'd wanted to throw you under the bus, I could have done it in my first year here. I could have leaked to a journalist. End quote. Is this the sort of conduct that you saw widely exhibited at ASIC?
Senator, I don't have anything to say about today's article.
Right. So, under the standing orders, you're required to answer our questions.
Would you mind repeating your question, please, Senator?
Well, I'm wondering about the sort of conduct that's going on at ASIC. I mean, is that a common statement to be uttered within the Commission?
Not to my knowledge.
So that's unusual, is it?
Senator, I do not want to be drawn on the article today. It is true that you have a prerogative to ask me whatever you want. But that article is clearly historical, as your earlier question acknowledged. Of course, as a matter of general principle, the idea of leaking and behaviour of that kind is, of course, unacceptable, and to my knowledge does not happen at ASIC, and certainly not since I became chair. So as a general matter, I hope that response is both uncontroversial and unsurprising.
No, I think that's a good response.
Yeah.
My question here is the role you played as the new chair, and we've canvassed this, as you know, many times in the past. I guess I'm wondering what steps you took, if any, when you discovered that these sort of comments were being uttered within the Commission to other commissioners and potentially to other staff at ASIC.
Well, again, Senator, you'll have to elaborate on that question. I read the article in this morning's paper, but that was about it. I don't have any knowledge of anything else.
Sure. I mean, these are not complicated questions. These are questions about the culture in the organisation. So my question is, what steps did you take when you became chair, when you discovered that these sort of comments were being made within ASIC, or did you not know that these comments...
Senator, I do want to answer your questions, but the premise of your question suggests that I discovered something on the 1st of June 2021 of a nature that's obviously very unattractive. That's simply not the case. I mean, I was clearly aware of a broader context when I started the job on the 1st of June 2021. But my job then, as now, and will be for the whole of my term, is to lead the agency in a productive, professional direction in the public interest. So I don't have any actual knowledge of...
Okay, fair enough.
I mean I'm not trying to be unhelpful.
No, you're not being unhelpful.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the steps that the organisation has taken to rectify what has been at times an untidy period, and with a view that there will be confidence in the agency going forward, that this is not a good look for the agency. So when you were appointed, you subsequently were given a copy of the report, weren't you? The Safe Bath and Shore report?
Yes.
Okay, and you read that?
I did.
Okay, and the view was that there were no steps that needed to be taken, or there were steps that needed to be taken?
A couple of points, Senator. Just going back to something you said a moment ago, the ASIC already has policies and procedures and principles of governance that were in effect on the 1st of June 2021, and I've always done my best as chair of the agency to continue to uphold those principles and requirements, and under my leadership that's been the expectation of everyone around me and certainly of myself. The second question.
Yep.
That was the subject of an extended hearing last year before this committee. I really don't have anything to add to what I've already said about having read that report and taken the decision I took subsequently. I really don't. I'm not here today to go over that again.
No, but
all I can do is refer the committee back to the evidence I gave them.
No, I understand that, but I do want to be firm with you that I'm not seeking to go over old ground here.
Okay.
But there is an existing inquiry into ASIC, and these issues have come up throughout the course of this inquiry. So clearly there were actions taken or not taken during the period of your role as chair, and decisions taken by other people, including ministers and people in ministerial offices, that were beyond your control. And we need to look at whether the laws that exist here are adequate. And, for example, were there enough remedies or options available to you as chair or available to a minister to adequately deal with cultural problems which may emerge? And so I'm asking you, in your experience, given this is quite recent, did you feel that you had sufficient options to address the matters that you inherited?
Understood. I think when I gave evidence the last time on this topic, I was quite clear and expansive on what the position was then. The law has not changed since then. The first point I would make that the issues that might be raised in connection with ASIC are not unique to ASIC. There are other agencies in the Commonwealth that are outside the Australian Public Service. The ones that quickly come to mind are entities like APRA and the Reserve Bank. And so I suppose my first point is we shouldn't be thinking about this as just something to do with ASIC.
Sure.
Secondly, it obviously raises some very significant and potentially sensitive policy issues. And the reason for that is fairly obvious, and with respect, Senator, you've acknowledged this already in the way you asked the question. We're talking about statutory appointees appointed by the Governor-General on the advice of Cabinet. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a relatively small group of people who are put into very senior roles, discharging duties of a wide nature in the public interest. So I suppose my second point is that wherever we land on this, it has to be a whole of government approach. It can't just be a whole of Commonwealth approach. It can't just be ASIC. And finally, I think it is fairly clear from the situation that there is a bit of a gap. So at the moment, under the ASIC legislation, for example, and I'd have to take some of this on notice, but the level of conduct that would support the termination of an appointment of a statutory appointee, it's a very high bar.
It is.
And so, but as we all know, there may be conduct that requires accountability or feedback to the person that falls well below the high bar that leads to termination, but it needs to be dealt with. And so I think there is a gap there at the moment, and how that gap should be filled and what process, what mechanism we should put in place to address that gap. I mean, that's a serious policy issue and one that for government.
Okay, so your evidence is that there was a gap, or there is a gap.
Well, my evidence is, as a matter of general principle, I think there's a gap.
Okay.
And secondly, in the particular circumstances that I was confronted with in February 2022, and again, I really can only refer back to what I said then. I went through a thought process and I landed where I landed. And one of the things I think I said at the time was that a code of conduct inquiry wasn't very practicable.
Okay. Well, let me just ask the Minister here, because I understand that, Minister Gallagher, that you said at the end of last year, I think, that the government was considering changing the arrangements so that public service leaders could be suspended for conduct breaches, including at statutory agencies as stat appointees. Is that still under consideration?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else you could
Well,
say
in
about this?
well, yes, and that would be, they would apply under the Public Service Act. So in relation to ASIC employment is subject to the ASIC Act. So I was talking about,
Yeah, I understand that.
so yeah.
So would the government consider, given the chair of ASIC has just given evidence that there's a gap in the arrangements, where we've seen a case in the recent time where there wasn't enough options. So is this something the government will take under consideration?
Look, I'm sure the minister responsible, is aware of issues in relation to ASIC, and will be looking at how best to, engage with ASIC leadership over ensuring, any gaps are dealt with, if they can be. I mean, one of the things about ASIC is it's independent, so I think...
But they're ministerial appointments.
Yeah, but the changes that I was looking at under the Public Service Act, deal with employment in different arrangement, under a different legislative arrangement.
Right.
But I wouldn't rule it out. I guess it's not something I've discussed with the relevant minister, but the government is aware of obviously some of the issues that have faced the ASIC leadership in recent times.